Hello everyone, I'm Yongwu. I'm the master student in University of Bamberg in Germany. So today I will talk about, like Tim said, a very classical occultist. Edward Lytton was a very fascinating figure in the 19th century history. On the one hand, he is a colonial secretary in the government, so he had a considerable political power. On the other hand, he was also a novelist, having published over 13 novels and several poems and dramas. However, most of his works were later dismissed by the traditional literary critics. At least for me, when I told my supervisor I want to research on these figures, she said, I have never heard about him in the literature history. So that's the situation. However, as literary critics have disparaged the value of Lytton's novel, occultists have expressed great respect for his work. Notably, his novel Zanoni, which published in the 1842, and the Warrior, The Power of Coming Race, which published in the 1871. These two books were highly regarded. For example, in Isis Unveiled, Blavatsky argued that Zanoni gave a more truthful and poetic description of certain occult beings. Similarly, the French occultist Pabst, in his influential work The Tarot of Bohemian, echoed Blavatsky's perspective. This discourse persists into the 20th century, continually in the work of the anthroposophist Rudolf Steiner. However, our presentation today is not to consider whether the description of a specific occult being in Zanoni are true or false. Instead, we aim to explore what makes Zanoni unique as a novel. Specifically, how readers can get the Rosicrucian or esoteric knowledge through the reading experience. Additionally, we will examine the narrative techniques employed in the novel and that enable the readers to acquire such kind of esoteric knowledge. So first, we need to clarify and define about the term initiation in my presentation. When we speak of a novel providing initiation to the readers, we are obviously not referred to an initiatory ritual. In this context, we understand initiation as a form of initiating to the higher knowledge or initiation to the higher level of recognition. I will then address the question of why it is important for a fiction. When reading Zanoni, it is very difficult for the readers to categorize this work. First, there is a shred of romantic love story depicting the relationship between the protagonist, Zanoni, and his lover, the Italian singer Viola. And secondly, it presents a journey, a quest to the esoteric knowledge, in which the character Clarence Glendon, he is a young English painter, is drawn to Zanoni's magic and superpowers. And he sought to learn this esoteric wisdom, but finally failed due to the challenge posed by the guardian of Schwerschuld. Additionally, the novel can be read also as a historical fiction about the French Revolution, with the characters from the Revolution period and the vividly depicting of the Robespierre's region of terror. So you can see it's very complicated. Similarly, in order to weave these shreds together, the narrator must employ various narrative techniques. based on my research, Zanoni utilized three main in-related narrative techniques. The first one is I called the naturalization, the translation between the actual and the fiction. For example, at the beginning of these novels, the narrators claimed in the preface that this work is actually a manuscript found in the old bookstore near the Covent Garden. This is a real district in London's West End. The narrator stated that an old man he met in the bookstore gave him the manuscript. And then he is just an editor, not the author of the manuscript. But when you go further into the novel, you might find that the old man is one of the characters in this novel, the English painter Clarence Glendon. So here we see the authors, the narrators, attempting to merge two opposing elements. That is the actual scene in real life and the fiction. Additionally, the second narrative strategy employed in the novel is deliberately creation of discontinuity between chapters. For example, the chapter 4 in this novel is detailed depicting historical events of French Revolution. But then the next chapters guide the readers into a supernatural scene. And then in the next chapters, the readers return to a realistic description later on. So the third narrator technique is very closely related to the second. That is, I called the inclusion of both historical and supernatural elements within the same scene. For example, there is a chapter portrayed a dinner party of the revolutionary period, where the historical figures like Condorcet and also the Jacques Cazot, they are real historical figures. Each of these persons expressed their philosophical perspective in this chapter. But simultaneously, the fictional character, the protagonist, Zanoni, is also in this scene. So we can see the narrators blend the historical depiction and the supernatural and the fictional characters. In addition to this narrative strategy, the scene also try to combine two opposing philosophical perspectives. On the one hand, Condorcet, who is influenced by the Enlightenment philosophy, he passionately advocated of his materialistic, progressive, and rationalistic beliefs. But on the other hand, the Cazot, he is a follower of the Pasquale, like a prophet. He foretold the destiny of people who presented in this party. So for the readers, after the French Revolution, we all know the Cazot's prophecy come true. So this is all three narrative strategies. So if we summarize these narrative techniques, we can conclude that the readers encounters the contradictory narrative from the very beginning of Zanoni, and the contradiction persists throughout the entire reading experience. Okay, this narrative strategy is quite unique and evoke certain Chinese Zen Buddhism allusions. In Zen Buddhism, the apprentice's initiation, guided by the master, is not conducted through the rituals, but is through a series of questions and answers. The masters typically presented the apprentice with the contradictory statements. And regardless of whether the apprentice chooses the answer A or the answer non-A, they are both incorrect. So this initiation can only be achieved through a path we call the synthesis of binary, which is hardly verbalized. Scholars of Rosicrucianism, such as Christoph Mackintosh, have identified a similar strategy in his study of Rosicrucian history. He concluded that the notable figures in Rosicrucian history embodied a paradoxical state of fear. A person can be simultaneously be a charlatan and a bearer of profound wisdom. So we can see the synthesis. Furthermore, esoteric knowledge, especially the Rosicrucian knowledge, is often transmitted through the disreputable channels. So I present a picture that simply illustrates this process of initiation unfolds. By confronting the interaction between the A and the non-A, the readers engage in the process of synthesis. And this synthesis leads to a higher knowledge. So thus we can conclude the novel Zanoni conveyed the idea of the Rosicrucianism through a narrative strategy called the synthesis of binary. Furthermore, if the reader is trained by the reading to apply this way of thinking to their own life, through this novel, they open the path to the higher level of knowledge. So, Zanoni's authors suggest that the characters in this novel represented various opposing archetypes. For example, the understanding and the imagination and the faith and the fear. So while reading, the reader may conceptually synthesize this binary, but when the novel is ended, the process of synthesis in the reader's life just begins, because this task is infinite. So scholars of Rosicrucianism remind us that many authors throughout the history of Rosicrucianism have adopted this approach. In addition to Edward Lytton, writers such as Gustav Meyrink incorporate similar techniques into his work and lead us to consider the extent to such strategy used as a general technique of initiation. So after Lytton, many occultists not only refer to the method in their writing on esoteric philosophy. For example, the Russian occultist J.O. Mabis writes such kind of similar strategy in his work Tarot Majors, and also the Valentin Tomberg in his meditation on the tarot. But also several contemporary occultists also present a theoretically book on Kabbalah in the form of novels and fiction. For example, Duquet's Chicken Kabbalah is a theoretic book for the practitioner of the Kabbalah. But in this book, he fictionalized a figure called Rabbi Lamont Ben Clifford and allows readers to grasp the Kabbalistic knowledge through a narrative filled with the contradiction, opposition, and the paradox. So from the Zanoni, we can derive a universal technique that, through a unique poetic approach, blurs the boundary between the fiction and the actual. The value of Zanoni lies not so much in whether it incorporates with an authentic esoteric experience or knowledge, but its presentation of the possibility of the universal path to a higher knowledge. This possible recurring throughout the history of Rosicrucianism has inspired a generation of readers to pursue esoteric wisdom. That's all. Thank you.
If you can't see it, then you just never know it.